All right, everybody, welcome back to the party. What we've got so far is we got the rear seat, got that down. As far as the floor is concerned, what we're gonna work on today is I think the floor on top of the gas tank here, because we are putting this on the S10 chassis. So stick with me. I think what we're also gonna have to do is stiffen up the B-pillars because my rear doors stopped closing after we cut the floor out. So we're gonna have to work on that. So let's get the floor in here and we'll cut out some pieces that we can put in here. Probably do some bead rolling for the floor under our feet in the back seat. So thanks for coming back. If you want to watch more build of the 1937 Chevy RatRod, I do appreciate it. So I'm going to do some work tonight. It's probably the only night I'm going to get to work on it this week. So we better be pretty efficient with our time and not waste it gawking off. So appreciate you coming back. Let's get to work. All right, before I get to building in this episode here, what I wanted to address is a couple comments about the seat, asking why is it so high? Well, you can see I've got my fender wells in both sides. I've got my seat, and I can't make the seat any lower because it is legit right on top of the differential there. So a couple things to keep in mind. First off, I did drop the chassis probably 10 inches. So where the diff is right under the seat. I mean, it has to be there. It's centered on the wheel well. So if we go outside there and look at where I have the wheel in the wheel well itself, or the fender, it's centered. So I can't move that back or forth because the differential has to be centered on the fender. And I also can't go up or down because the height of the wheels and tires, etc. So even with the airbags all the way down, the seat has to be right there. So looking at it from the outside, I'll take you out there in a second. I threw a fender on just to look at it, and it's right where it needs to be. So in regard to position of the seat and the height of the seat, it's fixed. It can't go anywhere. I think that, you know, somebody who's normal human size is going to be fine in the back seat. Me at 6'5", nope, not going to work so well. I do have to notch the bottom of the fender on both sides right where it kind of bumps into the axle. So I'll show you that here in a minute. Let me go outside and I'll show you the wheel well or the fender from the outside. All right, so I just threw the fender on there. It's just kind of resting on the ground. It's not up where it should be, but you can see the center of the wheel and the tire. It's pretty good position in the fender there. So I can't move the rear axle forward or backwards because it's dead center where it needs to be. So here is the old chassis for the Master, and you can see over here where the rear seat is, right over the diff. You can't go anywhere. So the differential is under where the rear seat was. If we just come over here, there it is. Seat's gone, of course, because the whole body's gone. But where the frame kicks up, that's exactly where the rear seat was. So that's why the rear seat on the Master is going to remain where it is. So we're going to get to doing some work here. Let's have some fun. All right, so this looks pretty dumb, kind of like a gasser moon buggy kind of goofy looking thing, but I did find out this. Where my trailer fender goes through, where my inner fender well is made, I've got to notch this a little bit because it was bumping onto the top of the axle when the airbags are all the way down. But when I did jack it up like this, you can see the airbags all the way extended. What I found was, hey, magic, rear doors close. So whatever position the body is flexed in now, because, you know, all this, you know, we're going to get rid of that anyways. But because this actually allows the rear doors to close, I'm going to notch that. We're going to put our framework into the floor under the rear seat, put it back down, and then we'll get the front doors working. So first things first, we're going to do a little notch there on both sides, and we'll get the fender well so that it does not contact the rear axle. All right, so first things first, I got to make that smooth. Just going to do a little hammer and dolly here. All right, so what you may have noticed so far on this build is I'm not necessarily going for, you know, super tight tolerances. We're kind of going for, you know, military quality build, which means, you know, goes to the cheapest bidder. So I just have this little bit of tin left over from something. I'm going to use that as a template here. And then we're just going to use our magical lightsaber. There is no measurement going into this whatsoever. I just know the spot that I just banged out with the hammer. And we're just going to trace this out like that. Bad ground maybe? Let's check it out. Not a bad ground at all. Just when you don't hook your air hose up to it, it doesn't do the lightsaber thing. So we'll try this again. Just gonna hold that up there. There you go. Got a notch for the axle. If you want to make it look pretty, I guess you can, but also that'll work. All right, well, I just had to do this. When I notched the fender well there, just so I could get the axle up into there as far as I could, this is where we ended up. Man, this thing looks awesome slammed on the ground. So it's going to go up a little bit because I'm going to put some rubber bushings in there underneath the frame that I made back here. It's resting on the S10 chassis. I mean, we dropped the roof 4 inches. I think we came down a total of like 10 inches with the suspension, getting rid of the knee shocks and the leaf springs on the original master chassis. I think that, they're not super spectacular looking wheels, but they're RatRod wheels. I think, the whole look of this thing is going to be totally badass with the front fenders and everything on there. So I was just super stoked. I just, threw the fender on there for a look so we could get a look at it. I'm going to start working on the floor in there. Got the doors shutting. Man, that made my night. So I'm going to start working on some skeleton in there. I think what I'll do is the floor of the back seat first, and then after I've got that secured in place, then we'll move on to the sills and everything in the floor up front. So I'm super excited. I hope you are. Okay, well, here's going to be the back seat floor. Now, a couple things are just dumb luck. So this was just the temporary support that I welded in a long time ago for between the B pillars here in the master. So when I happen to look where my S10 body mounts line up, check this out. It's right underneath there. And if I follow that across, it lines up with that one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of this 1 1/4 inch square tube that I got for cheap because the steel guy had an overstock of this. And I'm going to replace this 3/4 inch piece with some of this 1 1/4 inch square tube. The reason for that is if I put it right here, sure, just like that. If I put it there, there's this other cross member that goes over the fuel tank. That exhaust clearly won't be there anyways. But if I put my level here, well, looky do, it's only 1 degree out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build my skeleton just like we did for the rear seat. I'm going to do that here. I'm going to build it off the body mounts for the S10, and then we're going to tie it into the front of the rear wheel well just by the door there. So we're going to make our little skeleton here out of the 1 1/4 inch square tube, and then we will tack it in, make sure we're good. Then we'll take it out, fully weld it, and put it back in. That's the plan. I don't know how everybody else is, but I spend a lot of time overthinking this. It's probably been 30 minutes of me looking at this, poking around, looking at it, thinking things over, and probably doing some miscalculations like I have in the past, but nonetheless, we are moving forward. Okay, so per the usual, this body mount is lower than this one. Don't know why. probably because that was the cab and that was the bed for the S10, not sure. But I'm gonna have to raise this middle one so that I can make a level floor behind the front seat. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make some horizontal pieces like this, 3 in a row, so that I can get my support under where your feet are gonna go. What I'm gonna have to do is figure out this gap here, okay? So what I'm thinking is if I just put a horizontal piece like such, I'm gonna have to build my sill. What I'll probably do is just on the inside of the door, we have to have enough room for the door to close, which goes to here. So I'll build my sill back there, and then we'll just do a little, kind of like a little transition, like a little 90-degree bend, something or other, right there inside of the door sill. So when you step in, there's like another little step there. I could bring that floor all the way out flush to the door here, I guess, but then I would have to have a piece curving in like this inside of the sill so that the door doesn't bump into it. So I think for now, just for structural bits and pieces, we're going to build the floor inside of this area here, and we'll figure this part out later. That's 20 inches. I'm going to cut some cross pieces, and then we will tack that together, bring it back in here, make sure it fits, and then finally weld it in. All right, so here's my little diagram of what we're gonna do. This is the front, this is the back, so we're gonna, 26 inches is in the middle of the back support, 6.5 inches on either side, and up front is 5.5 inches. So I'm gonna clean up my 1.25 inch tube, get our skeleton ready to put in there. All right, well, we got everything laid out here, so I'm just gonna put a couple tacks in each of the corners, make sure that it kind of stays put. Take it back over there, stick it in, make sure that, you know, these things line up with the mounts on the frame so that, you know, we can put some holes in it so that we can actually stick the body to the frame. As long as everything lines up, looks fairly okay. I'll bring it back over here and do the final welding. All right, well, this is kind of unheard of. This just fell in there perfectly. I mean, I didn't have to do anything. I didn't whack it with a hammer. It just perfectly sat right where it belongs. So I'm gonna go back to the table back there. I'm gonna finish zapping in the corners all around. And then I guess we'll make some panels to put on there. Wow. All right. Hey, that's good news for 11 o'clock at night. That makes me feel really good. Well, here's the end of Monday night. Got the framework for our rear seat floor welded in place. Just got it kind of tacked on the B-pillar in front of the rear wheel well there. Lots of gaps, lots of stuff to fill in. But it is coming together. So some more work to do, obviously. Next thing that I will do is going to be the panels for the top here and here. I might make an access panel just in case we ever need to get at the tank and don't want to drop the whole thing. Not sure about that yet. Probably, you know, that's a future Adam problem. Hopefully never has to happen, but it's a good thought. So I'm going to wrap it up for tonight. It's 11:30. Time for Betty Bye. Well, we got some toys. So obviously before you saw me use the bead roller there on the bench with the vise holding it in place. Figured we would upgrade that. Ourselves a bead roller stand here and a bead roller drive system. So I'm gonna put that together so that when we're working on the trunk and the rear seat area, I can kind of be a little bit more efficient. So I'm gonna take a couple minutes to put this together. All right, so we got our bead roller mounting stand and our drive system set up here. I did a couple things here where I was just trying it out. It does work really nice. I mean, it's got good control over the speed and everything. I'll just set it in here and kind of do a little test run for you here. But what I did notice was that, you know, if I got this on forward, it's got forward, reverse, and speed control, and then you got your pedal here, which is great. But I really wish that the speed control was like a rheostat on the pedal, because if you're going too fast and you really want to try and make it as straight as you can, well, if you can't use your foot to control the speed of the pedal and you got to reach over here, like you want it a little faster, you want it a little slower. I mean, I guess I'm being nitpicky here, you know. I mean, I should be the last one making comments on shop equipment here. But I mean, it's sweet. It's a great addition. It's going to be really good for doing the rest of the panels on the floor. So, I mean, I'm going to take it. I'm not complaining. It's a little bit low for me, so I have to sit. Maybe if I put some big casters on there, I could lift it up a little bit, but I don't know. Just wanted a shop update, let you know what I got going on here. So this will probably help a little bit. But anyways, super nice. I got it at that Eastwood show a few months ago, so I'm going to try it out, and you know, hopefully it helps building the car. Let's get back to working. All right, so here's what we're going to do first. I'm going to connect to this, the pan of the rear seat, to this, which is the floor in front of the rear seat. I just did this little cardboard cutout template. I'm just going to cut a piece on an angle like that, 2 of them, and then we will have 3 panels, one over here, one in the middle, and one over there, so that we can fill in this area here. After that's done, we'll do our floor in front of the rear seat. Okay, well, there's simply no way that I can actually get the camera anywhere to get you in here, but you'll get the idea of what we're doing. This is going to be placed like such. I'm lining it up with my support under the rear seat. I'm just going to tack that into place now. And then what we're going to work on is a panel, as I said, dividing this into thirds. But I also did realize, you know, again, in the vein of I like making more work for myself, when I took the S10 off of here, remember when the guy told me when I bought the thing from him, when it's on airbags, he couldn't drop it all the way on the ground because the drive shaft was hitting this cross member here. Well, I put my floor support in front of this, or on top of this cross member here. This cross member has to be moved, or at least come up a little bit, so that it's out of the way, so that when the vehicle is dropped down on the airbags, it doesn't hit the stupid cross member. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to put this in here, so this is supported. I will then make kind of a tunnel for where the drive shaft goes. Once the tunnel's welded from this to this, then I will cut the middle section out of the floor thing. Once the middle section of the floor thing is cut out, then I will get rid of this cross member that's in my way right now. That's the plan. So what we'll do right now is weld these pieces in and then, see how it goes after that. All right, well, I've been looking at this for a half an hour and I hate wasting time like that, but I had to wrap my brain around my stupid mistakes here. So what I'm going to do in this area, there's my diff, the yoke for where the drive shaft goes, needs to go under this. This is going to be too low, would bump into that, probably hard to see from this angle, but that is pointing right at that. So I need to raise the floor here so that I can have a little hump for the drive shaft. And I also need to cut this out so that the drive shaft actually fits there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, first off, do some grinding, cutting, get rid of this central support so I can clean off the cross member. I'm going to then clean off the cross member. I've got some quarter-inch plate I'm going to put across the top of that. I'm not worried about that structure too much because if you remember when we dropped the axle, we put the notch in there. I've got two cross members between the notch in the axle. I've got a beefy cross member back there. When the transmission gets moved back, yes, all the transmission fluid leaked out. That was awesome. I'm going to move the cross member from that further back here, so it's going to come back about 10 inches. I think the chassis is plenty strong. We're only running a V6 in it, so I think this is going to work fine. So I just got to do some cutting because I've been wasting, I don't know, half an hour looking at this garbage. So that is what you're going to watch me do next. Well, so had to cut apart the frame that I made there, of course. Kind of reminds me every day why I don't do this as a profession, because if I was building your car, you would never get it. And it's a good thing that I'm building on this thing on my own time. So I cut my quarter-inch plate and I thought, well, you know what, since I off-cut that, it was too wide for the cross member. I figured, what the heck, I'll just double it up here. Structurally, how much difference does that make? Probably none at all. But for me, I think I might just use this as an opportunity to practice doing some welding, see if I can get a good bead and lay some, good welds down here just for practice. Clear my head a little bit, and then I'll go cut the cross member out and weld this in place. Then we can finally get to working on the skeleton again for the floor. So, just one of those things. Guess, you just roll with it. And so I'm going to first tack this together, and then I'll try running a good bead on there, and then I guess everybody can grade me. So, well, let's see what happens. All right, before I jump in on the other side, you can see what I did there is I started my cuts on the cross member. I got my pieces that I welded together there of my 1/4 inch plate, so now it's a 1/2 inch thick. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tack it on the edges there so that the cross member doesn't, try and weep or weep whenever I cut through the rest of it. So I'm going to tack the corners, or maybe I'll just weld the whole thing in, and then once I'm done with that, I'll put the Sawzall blade back through the cut that I already made, and I will finish the cut on the bottom. Therefore, my drive shaft has clearance. Then what I'm going to do is I will take the pieces of metal that I cut to build my new frame for the skeleton for the floor, and we can finally put the floor in here. So yeah, that's the plan. So let me just tell you, it's a good thing the camera wasn't running about 10 minutes ago, because if you're all familiar with the scene in the Christmas Story where the old man's fighting with the furnace downstairs, stringing together a number of cuss words you wouldn't believe. I'm so glad there were no kids around, because oh my God, that was terrible. So I am gonna just tack what I have in here, and I need to walk away, have a beer or something. I don't know. I'm about ready to friggin' put this thing in the crusher. So let me just tack this in and walk away for a minute, or like an hour or 4 days. I don't know. I'll be back. Thanks for watching. Well, here we go. So it's after dinner. Maybe I was a little bit hangry earlier, but we got the structure done for under the floor there. So down here, you can see my 2 new horizontal pieces. Well, if I would have just made that whole thing out of my 3/4 inch square tube, this wouldn't have been an issue, but instead I tried to use that 1 1/4 tube, which just got in my way. I had to cut the cross member out, all that stuff. That needs to be cleaned up, and probably put some fish plates on that, some kind of buttressing, I don't know, gussets of some sort to make that a little bit stronger. But I am going to have to hold off for a little bit and then come back and do some sheet metal work and try and put some panels on here to make forward progress. So feel a lot better after a little break there, and we're gonna get back after it. Well, none of today went as planned, so the last thing I want to do before it gets too late, I just want to cut maybe 1 or 2 of the panels to put in the floor for the back seat before I call it a night. I need something that's a win, something that's an accomplishment, because man, this thing just beat me up today. So I'm going to cut out a couple of these little panels for in front of the rear seat, and then I'm going to, we'll draw some lines on there, maybe run it through the bead roller, see if we can make something that looks halfway decent. So let's try doing that before the end of the night. All right, so all I did is I drew 1 inch lines all the way around. I just used a socket, just just to get a radius there in the corner. Who knows? We're gonna find out if it works or not. So I'll set it up here, see what we can get done with the new bead roller setup. See if we can make anything that's usable, or is it just gonna be junk like the rest of the day? Well, here you go. Pretty simple little panel. Nothing fancy, just wanted a little bead on there to make it a little bit more durable. Not bad for the first try. I really do, like I said, I wish that the rheostat that controls the speed, which is right here, was down there on the pedal. Kind of like you want the car to go faster, you hit the gas pedal. But I'm gonna see if this fits in the car. See if we got one of our first panels here. Well, would you look at that? We got a panel. So we're just gonna put a couple tacks on that. Maybe I'll do this one right here afterwards, just so I can feel like I got something done for today, and we'll call it a successful night. All right, so this is going to be the last panel for the night. It's getting kind of late, but I just traced out a perimeter. I'm going to use that same die so that I can do the perimeter, and then we'll roll some beads in the middle there as well. Nothing fancy here, again, amateur hour. I'm just going for something pretty simple so we can get a floor in the back seat. So let's get this one rolled out, and then we will take it to the car and put it in front of the rear seat for the floor there. All right, well, it's after 11 again. That's my typical work time on this thing, but after all the struggles earlier, we do have the start of the little transition. I don't know what you call that. Transition between the back seat and the floor in front of you. Got our tacks in there holding that. It's pretty sturdy. There's no oil canning. Doesn't bounce up and down. It's under some pretty good tension there. We'll repeat that on the other side. We'll also do some fillers just like this, there, there, and there. But that's where I am gonna have to leave it right now. Leaving tomorrow for Kentucky for basketball tournament for the weekend. So this will be all we wrote for this week on the Master Deluxe. All right, well, I'm calling it a night. It's late, you can see it's dark outside. I got a lot of work done. It felt like there was a lot of struggling this time. If you've got comments about what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, please leave them. If you watch this long, I really appreciate it. I know that these probably are tedious. There's a ton of channels out there that are doing content probably a lot better than this. Long list of them that I watch so I can figure out and teach myself as I'm going. But I do appreciate everyone watching, and that's where I'm gonna have to leave it for this week. We will get back after it next week. So I do appreciate it. Thanks for coming back. Have a good week.